bringing to you this amazing company from Boston that started at CIC. Nimit, Sawhney, welcome to the call. We are excited to have you present a little bit what you guys have been doing, the progress, the vision you have, and also maybe tell us a little bit about the why. What is it we're not seeing, anything that keeps you up at night and you really think this is, the way to go?
Thank you. Thank you, Alistair. Great to be here. And thank you to your team for organizing this great gathering. So my name is Nimit, one of the co-founders at Voatz. Voatz is how we like to describe it. It's the youngest elections company here in the US. We got started a little over 5 years ago, purely by accident after winning a hackathon at South by Southwest. And the theme of the hackathon was Hack to the Future. What's the one thing you would do in the future and how would you do it? And so we ended up prototyping a new election system from scratch that essentially used smartphones, biometrics, real-time ID verification, and then logged all the ballots on a blockchain-based infrastructure. And to our utter surprise, we ended up winning the first prize. So that kind of led to a whole series of things. And in 2015, we formally started the company. So I'm happy to share a little bit about the progress we've made over the last few years, and also kind of look at where we are going from here, including our participation in the most recent election here in the US, and then address some of the questions which Alistair raised as well. And so I'll just share my screen.
And we have a couple of investors, a few investor groups on the call today. I really encourage you to pay attention to this presentation. I believe Voatz is definitely a company that could be the future for the next gen cities, next gen communities, giving a voice to everybody. Nimit, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, we believe that the future of voting is mobile. It's almost inevitable in our humble opinion. And the reason is because we are doing pretty much everything else on our phones these days compared to a few years ago. And the complexity of these devices, the sophistication of these devices has increased manifold, both on the usability front as well as the security front. And so we've taken a very mobile first approach in terms of how we built the system from scratch, and have been fortunate to have some very unique opportunities in this space. So Voatz was the first smartphone app-based election system to ever being used in an official government election here, starting in 2018. And since then, we've been carefully and methodically piloting the solution with small voter demographics and gradually increasing. And some of these elections have actually been attacked by threat actors. And so we're collecting a lot of security data as well, and creating a level of transparency through a system of public audits. So we pioneered the whole idea of citizen-led audits with our elections with Denver County last year. And since then, it's been used for every election we've done. And earlier this year became the first remote voting system to be tested against official election system standards. Even though there are no specific exact standards for remote voting, we use the set of standards which exist for in-person voting machines, and used whatever was relevant to come up with a kind of a first baseline. And also the use of blockchain, we feel very excited about that. It's not a cure for everything, but it's very useful for auditing and for removing a single point of failure and adding more resiliency to the system. So far, the system has been used successfully in 5 states in the country, in the US, and 30 counties. And the focus has been on voter demographics who have traditionally been very disenfranchised. So if you look at military voters and citizens overseas, historically only 7% of them vote. And so our goal has been how to make it easier for them because the traditional options don't work for them very well. And then this year, we've also added voters with disabilities and voters who've been impacted by COVID and very high risk of getting impacted by that. And to give you a sense of where it's kind of spread across the country, we started with West Virginia, then Denver County in Colorado, then Utah County in the state of Utah, and then Jackson County in Oregon, and Pierce County in Washington State as well. So overall, we've done 70 plus elections so far, both sides of the political spectrum, as well as some nonprofits and obviously governments as well. Coincidentally, both major political parties use our system, so it does have some element of bipartisan support, and they've used it for their internal elections, for the state conventions, and for the party voting. We did multiple state conventions this year where the entire voting process was virtual, obviously because of in-person events getting canceled. And the feedback has been largely very positive. Some of the testimonials were very grateful. This is one from the head of the Utah Republican Party, and then similarly from the head of the Michigan Democratic Party. Both sides have loved the system and have used it for their voting as well. In terms of our focus, obviously security is top of mind given the very sensitive nature of the space. So we've had that as a core philosophy right from the very beginning. We've been collaborating with the Department of Homeland Security here, done a couple of assessments. We talked about the federal testing lab, so we completed that earlier this year as well. We are in the process of finishing our ISO 27001, which helps us to mature as an organization, given that we're a very small company right now, and also compliant with the NIST 863 remote identity verification standards as well. And in addition to security, another focus area for us has been the accessibility. So we spoke about voters who can't vote the traditional way, who can't hand mark a paper ballot, who can't go vote in person. And for them, the traditional choices have either been not to vote or to give up their right to privacy and seek somebody else's help. And so by taking advantage of the great accessibility features we have on both Apple devices and Android devices these days, we've incorporated that into the ballot design and to make it really, really accessible for voters with disabilities. So we recently had a blind voter who voted completely hands-free using voice and voice authentication. And we've similarly had voters with motor disabilities who've managed to vote with huff and puff device or a double tap, triple tap. And so very, very excited about that to kind of enable a secure and private option for this additional voter demographic, which has traditionally been ignored in our humble opinion. So quickly talking about the most recent election here in the US, we had a small role to play, although it was very pioneering. So for the first time, smartphone app-based system backed with a blockchain infrastructure was used in the US presidential elections. It was used in a couple of states by a few counties, and the most prominent was Utah County in the state of Utah. They've done 5 elections with us already, so this was their 5th election, and they've seen a a really interesting increase in turnout in these three demographics: the military voters, citizens overseas, and voters with disabilities. And so, with this specific election, they had record turnout um, compared to the previous elections they've done with our system. Another jurisdiction which used our system had 2.5 times increase in turnout, and this was their second election with us. So we're clearly seeing a trend, an early trend in voter preferences in terms of voters preferring this over, other traditional methods of voting, giving us very good feedback on how we can improve and make it better and more sort of accessible for them as well. So we already talked about that. We've been fortunate to have a couple of small pieces of history attached to our work, and very grateful and humble for that. And looking forward to a few more opportunities in the years to come in other parts of the world as well. And coincidentally, this weekend would be our first foray into the international space. The government of Brazil actually invited an international, it was a call to showcase remote voting options, internet voting options for their citizens, so they can decide how they want to proceed for their big election in 2022. So we are one of the entities who are invited to do a proof of concept election this Sunday. And we're excited to do this in partnership with AWS as well. And the reason it's very exciting is because it's the first time a national government has taken such a leap. And Brazil has traditionally been one of the leaders in electronic voting. They gave up paper a long time ago, like India, but their machines are obviously not connected to the internet. So this is kind of the next leap of faith, and we're excited to participate in that. We talked about what kind of makes our platform unique. It's essentially the four pillars. There's the smartphone. So we're not doing this on a web browser. It is a native smartphone app. You have to have a certain kind of a phone. If you have, there are some classes of Android phones which essentially are not supported because of security reasons, and we're constantly trying to add more devices. On iOS, it's pretty much all devices after Model 5S or newer. There's biometrics, there's the ID verification piece, and then the blockchain infrastructure. And essentially, from a user perspective, you sign up to be an absentee voter. If you're vetted, you get an invitation, and then you go through an ID verification process. You take a picture of your photo ID, a live video selfie, so it matches your face. Make sure your data matches the voter registration system. Then digitizes your identity, locks it on the secure element on the phone with the help of your biometric, and deletes all the documents for privacy reasons. And then you get access to your ballot. And then once you vote, you actually get a receipt as well. It's an encrypted digital receipt with an anonymous ID on it. And we feel like that receipt is really important because it lets you audit your vote, which is unlike previous attempts to do online voting. So here you can audit your vote. You can actually, and here in the US, we still generate a paper ballot for tabulation of the jurisdiction's end. So you get to see the image of your eventual paper ballot and the record on the blockchain as well, in a very anonymous manner, so other people don't figure out that it's your ballot, that it's your vote. Only you know. And that we feel is really important to build transparency and auditability in the system, and at the same time letting independent citizens audit the system. So we actually have a couple of audits for the recent election beginning soon. And if you would like to participate as an independent citizen, independent auditor, let us know. We can, get you set up so you can audit the election as an independent citizen as well. And just to kind of summarize why we feel this approach is different from historical approaches to online voting, and we talked about why mobile is key here. There's the whole idea of using hardware-based security on your smartphone, which is not available for the most part on desktop computers at the moment. There's the whole idea of doing remote ID verification, which is not used in, as far as we know, all other forms of voting on a web browser. And then the other aspects which we are really, really excited to be on the forefront of the innovation is the ability for the system to detect threats. So unlike web browsers, the smartphone app can detect if your device is compromised, if there's malware, or if there's some other suspicious app running to a very high level of accuracy. Similarly, it can detect if you're on an unsafe network using unsafe Wi-Fi, and it can force you to switch. And those are very, very essential because as we move to commodity citizen-owned devices for voting, we want to make sure that that environment is, not compromised. The use of blockchain and distributed ledgers gives us that resiliency. There's no single point of failure, and it's incredibly hard to insert a fraudulent vote. So we can do it. The election officials can do it. The government can do it. An independent person can do it because you immediately get detected and blocked. And the only theoretical way for you to be able to insert a transaction would be for everybody to collude, which would be highly unlikely. And so that's really key. The idea of having voter verifiable receipts, public audits, making the system accessible for voters with disabilities, and then ensuring one device, one vote. I think those are key principles which make this unique. And as we already spoke, there's a certain group of voters who really need this. And so we focus on that as a first step. And then eventually, hopefully this technology will be available to much wider populations in the years to come, in the elections to come. And that's, I'll pause there and open it up for questions. But once again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for having us here.
Excellent. Thank you, Nimit. So we have a couple of questions. I think Nick Anderson, president of the Keretsu Forum chapter, wants to ask a question. Let's unmute Nick. Mickey.
Okay, he's on here twice, so I'll try the first one and see which one works.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Nick, is your mic unmuted?
I am unmuted.
Okay, you can ask your question.
So great presentation. I'm getting feedback. I don't know whether everybody else is getting feedback. So great presentation. I just wanted to ask you what you think the adoption rate is going to be in in the U.S. particularly, which is your major market, I assume.
Yeah. So the U.S. The adoption rate, we expect it to be slow and steady, and the reason for that is it is different from most of the countries. Almost every other country has a central election commission or a central election management body which manages elections. Here in the US, the federal government doesn't run elections, as we all know, it's the states. And even at the state level, it's the counties and the local.
Right.
So it's 4,000 election jurisdictions. So that's good and bad. It's good that, they all can make their own decisions pretty much based on certain guidelines. But then there's also a lack of standardization, like even ballot design, everybody does it on their own sweet way, processes, procedures. And so in a sense, change is, we have to sell county by county. In some cases, we can sell it to a state and then they can do a top down. But in most cases, it's kind of a bottom up. So it's a more time consuming, gradual process. That's one. And two, there are legal restrictions as well. Some states don't allow any form of technology to be used right now. And so our strategy is to get our foot in the door, focus on the demographics, like we said, the military voters, citizens overseas, voters with disabilities, get them to help them first, and then slowly expand access. So we think things will start to get kind of more from an adoption perspective with the 2022 cycle, 2024 cycle. I think the next demographic is local elections.
So to make it more concrete, you're talking doubling the number of counties that you're going to cover. You're going from 4 counties to 20. You're going to 4 to 1,000. I mean, so that's the first question. Second, but just a little bit of advice. With a new administration, I suggest that you really go in there and try to help out. There's going to be you may not know, the U.S. Constitution does, even though there are, the states have jurisdiction over their election. The U.S. Constitution actually mandates or says that there can be national standards for federal offices. So, and then there's also the carrot and stick that there can be, funding for such technology. So I would strongly suggest that you try to get a federal presence. Somehow, I know you're a small company, it's hard to do, et cetera, but you might start actually where I suspect your best point of contact would be in the U.S. Digital Service. We should probably take this offline, but U.S. Digital Service is probably either there or Homeland Security is a place to go. You can get enforced federal standards, and if you force them to do it with the military, then that's your end. So, but anyway, how many on your present course? What are you expecting? You expecting 10 counties next time, or 100 counties in the future?
Yeah, I think next year we are targeting 10 counties, and then for the 2022, kind of close to 25, and sort of gradually doubling. We are seeing a lot of interest from international markets as well. And so we talked about Brazil, Philippines, and the market where we've been shortlisted to do a mobile voting pilot soon. And so it's very likely one of the international markets will kind of, lead first and, do a much wider adoption. But definitely our goal is to at least, double the number of counties, if not faster. And in some places, as we spoke about, do a top-down approach where we get the whole state to adopt with a, cooperative licensing agreement, and then every county can, just do it without needing to sign separate contracts. And so, yeah, trying a level best to do, and would love to kind of hear from you offline on, further collaboration with the U.S. Digital Service. So that sounds like a good idea.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nimit. So this is exciting stuff. It's definitely needed. So if you need help with Europe, we can maybe connect you with some folks in the city of Strasbourg. The European Parliament is there, so it's a good place to visit. So once we can visit again. And we have a couple of folks on the call today from Strasbourg and others that's going to visualize this presentation later on. So if there's any European ambition, just let us know as well, and we can take it offline.
Yeah, we'd love that. I think it'd be cool to try and do something with Strasbourg and the European countries. Yeah, especially there have been, Estonia is one of the leaders in online voting. And then we know Switzerland has had some experience with their, they have a lot of local voting in the cantons. And so we'd love to explore opportunities in France and other areas as well. Yeah, thank you. Would love any help there.
Excellent. We'll make the intro. And, I'm a bit surprised of the lack of momentum that, governments have on solutions like yours, because, I'm quite worried actually of, the impact of social media, digital video, these algorithms, on democracy, and also foreign forces using the freedom we have here in the US to sort of, have, freedom of speech and so on. But then how does it influence, basically people? And I do find that this is sort of something that keeps me up at night a little bit. And I'm sort of worried we're using tools like Facebook, which was not built for that, right? And so how come the governments are not pushing more, for more solutions like this? It seems to me to be a matter of like national security.
Yeah. As we're all aware, governments are, typically very risk averse. And in this year, because of COVID, I think a lot of their attention has been diverted. And it's a lot of times selling to government has been, meeting in person multiple times, getting warm introductions, doing a lot of demonstrations. and that whole in-person activity has gotten disrupted today. So I think everybody's adjusting to this new world of, remote meetings, remote conversations. So I'd say that probably is one reason, but it's more recent. But you're right about, the threat of some of the, social media misinformation, and that's getting worse day by day, and it's a very big risk to our societies. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're saying they're risk adverse. I'm saying if they're risk adverse, they should use such solution, because today it's sort of a, we see it in Europe. A lot of people first don't vote because they don't go vote. They don't. It's not even going through the right channel. So a lot of people are left out. We saw this with the Brexit in the UK. I think there was some data around that a lot of people discovered Brexit the day after it was elected, right? And so, but this is a major threat, I think, for democracy overall. So, I'm just surprised, that governments are not more reacting fast to make sure everyone has a voice. But then my other question is, did we do any projection if everyone was to vote, right? How would it actually influence also who gets elected, right? So now if it's really easy to vote, it's on the phone, there's no barrier for voting. Have you guys sort of thought about this as well?
Yeah. So one of our kind of goals over the next, so our 2024 goal is to have up to 200 million voters on the platform across the world. And so some of the early trends we are seeing, like specifically here in the US, there's a perception that if more people vote, it'll help one side over the other. But the data actually says it's pretty even. I think people on all sides will benefit if more people vote, if more people have access to voting. And I think people want it. That's what we are seeing. I mean, we had a military voter who voted on the recent election who hadn't voted for 17 years. He's serving the country, he's living overseas, and he just wasn't able to do it in a way which made him feel like his vote would count. And this year he did. And so I think there's a lot of hunger for it, and hopefully, like you said, governments will start to react faster and help citizens who really need it as a first step, and then eventually offer it as a choice to everybody.
Yep, excellent. Well, we're big supporters of what you do. We think it's very necessary, and we'll do our job to make sure we evangelize and let the right people know that you exist and that we need this. Thank you, Nimit. So this closes the talk. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, and thank you for organizing this session.
Excellent. If anyone wants to contact Nimit, let us know in the chat by email to Innovo, and we'll make an introduction. Thank you. Thank you, Nimit. Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.